And welcome everybody to another not so victorious episode of the Assembly Call. This is Andy Bottoms. I'll be flying solo tonight with Jared. Jared getting married, and Ryan covering the games, and Will and the other interns. I think heading home for the holidays and things like that. So it'll be a solo one tonight. I'm not honestly sure how long I'll be able to speak about this this game based on the way that it played out, but I'll definitely try to hit up any questions people have. So if you've got those, fire them back at us at the Assembly Call Twitter account. I'm logged in there, and we'll try to hit some of those as we go. IU loses tonight 72-69 against UNLV in the fifth place game of the Maui Invitational. A game that IU tried to give away early. They did fight back and do a nice job of coming back, both in the first half to kind of close it a little bit. By halftime, they tied the game at 46 at one point in the second half, and then went 8 straight trips without a score, and got down by as many as 13, I believe. And then Zeisloft, channeled his inner Todd Leary, hit a couple threes. Hartman with a 4-point play got IU back in, and I think they got as close as 3 the rest of the way. Fed the post to Thomas Bryant, who missed a layup. Many on the IU bench and many on Twitter, based on my @mentions, thought that he got fouled. I thought, while he did get bodied a little bit, I'm not so sure that that's different than kinds of contact that are going to go uncalled in the Big Ten. So could have seen that go either way, but I'm not going to argue a great deal about that one. So eventually Blackman got the lead down to 3, and then a incredibly terrible sequence of basketball commenced, where IU had a 5-second goal trying to get the ball inbounds on the sidelines. Yogi was inbounding it. Not sure really what I think of that decision. They were trying to find Zeisloft because he's been so hot during the game, but Yogi was unable to get it in bounds. UNLV then made arguably one of the worst, according to Bill Walton, one of the 9 worst basketball plays in the history of college basketball, which may actually not be far off, despite what you may think of some of Walton's typical comments during these games. So IU got the ball back. They did. Hartman brought the ball in this time, got it to Zeisloft, but his 3 was blocked on some nice help defense and a solid defensive sequence by UNLV. UNLV did miss a couple other free throws, but at that point, there really was nothing else that Hartman could do, or that Zeisloft could do, or that Hartman could do after getting the rebound. Kind of tried to throw it the length of the court, but missed. So just a really disappointing game, which I guess is a fitting way to cap what was a really disappointing trip, based on what our expectations of this team were going in. I don't think there's any way to categorize it as anything other than a huge disappointment in terms of how the team showed itself in these games. Even the win against St. John's was not impressive. To beat that team only by 10 points, a team that had lost by a wide margin to a D2 school, to only win by 10 points in that game and give up 73 points was not great, and certainly tonight was poor as well. If you look at the numbers, I mean, there's a couple things that really were IU's undoing tonight. Turnovers, especially early, were just killer. They had 10. They had more turnovers than made field goals for a really good chunk of the first half. I think even at the under 12 timeout, IU had 8 turnovers already by that point, and got a couple more almost immediately after that. And if it wasn't for just some really poor decision-making, shot selection, poor play from UNLV in general, IU could have been down far, far more than they were at halftime. Free throw issues, reared their head. IU was only 10 of 19 from the line, missed a number of those toward the end of the first half that would have gotten even closer, missed some, in the second half as well. But those 2 things were ultimately the undoing. And of course, the defense. I guess we can't go a show without talking about the defense, which unfortunately I feel like we're getting numb to how, judging by many of you on Twitter, you're not getting numb to it. So maybe numb isn't the right word, but I think we're getting used to how poor the defense is. And that continued to be an issue again during tonight's game. Dribble penetration, particularly early. I think the first 8 to 10 points that UNLV scored was all right at the rim. And for reasons known only to them, they really got away from that, shot some threes, took some terrible shots, let IU creep back in the game, panicked a little bit at times as IU started to make a run in the second half, and it kind of felt like IU might be able to take control, but they could never get over the hump. They could never take the lead back. I'm not even sure that they ever led in this game, and if it was extremely early. And like I said, they tied it at 46, but I think went on had a really poor 8 possession span there. Right after that, before I think Blackman eventually got a basket. I think Yogi hit a jumper to break that streak, but then a couple of plays right after that, a couple more turnovers, and just the turnovers, and it's just the careless nature of the turnovers. I mean, it's one thing to turn the ball over, which is obviously disheartening, but I feel like this is so much of what we talked about 2 years ago, that this team now feels like the worst combination of the last 2 years of teams, where completely careless with the ball offensively, and completely unable to guard the dribble and keep people out of the lane and really do anything on defense with any regularity. And so, the turnovers, Troy had a couple turnovers earlier that were just inexplicable. There was another one from him late in the game when IU was kind of making a run. He's dribbling off of a break and into a pack of 4 guys and loses the ball. And that was one area coming in. UNLV was ranked 36th in the country, at least when I looked before the game, at turnover rate on defense. And so I tweeted out a couple things to watch statistically, were how much would IU turn the ball over and how well would they be able to keep UNLV off the glass, because UNLV had done really well from an offensive rebounding standpoint. And in general, on the boards, I thought IU did a pretty good job. I mean, UNLV's offensive rebound percentage finished at below 20% on the night. So that was certainly an area that IU did well. But IU's turnover rate of 26.8, at least the site that I'm looking at, was over 30 for a large portion of this game. And I think what became the most concerning, in large stretches of the second half, was that the offense that everybody has looked at as, what's really going to carry this team over the course of, a long stretch of play in the second half, the offense just looked completely confused and unsure of what was going on. And it was, for as much as we've, talked about the defense, and this was certainly a game that the defense, I don't want to see any, the offense lost this as much as the defense. The offense did not play well in this game, but the offense really allowed UNLV to get pretty much whatever they wanted and really gain some confidence. And then when it really mattered, and IU was trying to come back, and I don't know if it's 3 games in 3 days, but offensively just looked really unsure of what they wanted to do at all during that stretch. And I think that part was equally disheartening as the continued lack of improvement and focus defensively, is that the offense that was supposed to be, what this team was all about and what had everybody so excited, really went into a huge slump in a sequence of the game when IU had a chance to get back into it. And I think this team right now just looks like it is searching for answers in pretty much any place they can find them, because they really look lost out there. And certainly, as we think about what that means moving forward, is concerning. And you wonder how they're able to right the ship. As they get back. Obviously, Monday's game against Alcorn State isn't going to do anything to tell you anything about this team. But with a trip to Cameron Indoor looming, coming off of a game like this is really ugly. So, with that being said, I'll try to touch on a couple individual players. I hit a couple of the stats. IU, shot the ball extremely well from 3-point range. So I guess if you want to look at a positive, they were 11 out of 20. Zysov was 5 of 6. I thought he was one of very few bright spots today. Played really well, picked his spots nicely, did a good job of moving without the ball and trying to find open space. And I thought he did a good job there. So IU shot the ball well from 3-point range. And really, effective field goal percentage of 56.7 is pretty good. But it doesn't make a lot of difference when you don't get a lot of offensive rebounds, only 16.1% offensive rebound percentage. You turn the ball over a ton and you miss a boatload of free throws in a game that IU did a better job of getting to the line than they have been during a number of games this season. So, if you look at individual numbers, Zysloft led the team with 17 points. Blackman, the only other player in double figures, had 13 points and 7 rebounds. Was 5 of 12 from the floor, had 3 turnovers. I thought played okay offensively in stretches, but continues to struggle so much on defense. There were so many times when I found myself yelling at him about what he was doing, closing out overly aggressively again, even when they were in zone on a possession, just, kind of overcommitted to one side and the guy drives the lane. Everybody has to try to react, and UNLV gets a layup out of a zone, which you're trying to do to keep the other team out of the lane. he had a layup, rim out that was, really close at the end of the game that would have been, a big bucket. But overall, I thought while offensively, he ended up with 13 points, not particularly efficient, took 12 shots to do it. Did have 7 rebounds, led the team in rebounding, and I think he's starting to show, at least at times, some of that rebounding prowess that we saw from him. Troy Williams ended with 9 points, had 6 rebounds, but 4 turnovers. I thought all of the turnovers were of an extremely careless variety. And I'll be interested to see when this updates with how many minutes everybody played, how many he actually played, because I thought he sat in stretches. And I think Ryan tweeted this out from the game, that you could tell UNLV's game plan was whenever they saw Blackman or Troy Williams on him, they were going to try to shove it right down their throat and really drive at him. And I think that, I just, it was very clear what their philosophy was, and those guys just could not make the adjustments to stop it. Max Bielfeldt, I thought, also had 9. He was another bright spot. He did a little bit more of his work on the interior in this game, and that's something that we've talked about on here, a number of times with, not settling for 3-pointers. He did take 2 3-point shots, but, made a few 2-point shots, made some nice moves in the post, only had 4 rebounds, but other than that, I thought he played relatively well. Yogi ended with 9 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds, but 4 turnovers, was just 3 of 9 from the floor. Did get back and, hit a 3 in this game, as he hit one yesterday, but just 2 of 5 from the line, which was really surprising from him given how he shot free throws over his career. Thomas Bryant, 7 points, 3 rebounds, had 4 fouls. I think the fouls took him out of it a little bit, just 1 of 4 from the free throw line. He scored 4 of his points in the first couple minutes of the game and then didn't score again until there were just a couple minutes left, and really, really struggled in general there. So Juwan Morgan gave him a few good minutes, ended up with 1 point. Robert Johnson, they didn't get any points out of him, had 2 rebounds, 2 assists, a couple turnovers. I didn't think he played particularly well. Both of his shot attempts were pretty much instant replays of each other, got swatted at the rim, and overall didn't think they got a lot out of him. The starting lineup reverted back in large part to what it had been. Hartman stayed in the starting lineup and, made his 4-point play at the end, which was a huge play at the time. It was just a really rough performance for IU all around. So as far as, I'm going to try to hit some Twitter questions here. I'm just going to try to hit these as many as I have. Somebody, sports_immortal, I'll kind of address one of these questions, but just a barrage of tweets. I'm not really sure what the point of some of this is, quite frankly, but how long will you guys blindly support the coach and program? Should Crean get on the plane? Clearly people are frustrated with Crean. I probably, of the 3 of Ryan, Jared, and I, have been the most critical of him over the course of time. And I don't think that these games this week do anything to change my mind about that. I do think we've talked about some of the substitution patterns. We've talked about, preparedness, and is there really improvement? So if his seat was hot to begin the year, it's certainly even hotter now, and rightfully so. I don't think, for as much as we wanted to see, and maybe we were seeing what we wanted to as we looked at these first couple games, in terms of defensive improvement, when the competition has gotten tougher, you really haven't seen it. And so for all the talk about the work that's gone into it, the team continues to get beat by the same plays. Thomas Bryant struggles tremendously in ball screen defense, but no adjustments are really made. Now, there were a couple of times I thought IU played good ball screen defense and got called for a foul tonight. But in general, they continue to struggle with the same things. I mean, there was one play, Seagears drove from the 3-point line through 4 IU players. There wasn't even another UNLV player inside the 3-point line, I don't believe, and got a shot at the rim. I mean, it is the shot charts that Ken Bykoff is putting out during the game show that these opponents are just killing IU getting the ball to the basket. And obviously a lot of that falls on Creed to be able to come up with a defensive scheme that's able to stop that. And they switched to his own for a couple possessions tonight, and it was effective, I think, about once. And then the other times, UNLV still got the ball wherever they wanted. So, we're certainly not going to talk about whether he should get on the plane. I got a lot of those even on my own Twitter feed during the game of, is he going to get fired? If this is a pro program, does he even get on the plane? I mean, I don't think that's up for discussion. We've heard what Fred Glass has had to say about it. I don't think there's any reason to believe anything will happen during the season. And I also would say that it's November. So I'm not going to say they won't, they don't have a chance to turn things around. But this is a pretty ominous start to the season. And I I'm certainly not happy with what we've seen and the adjustments that were made even over the course of this trip as things were there, and that has to change quickly. And in the other thing I guess I'll say about from a coaching standpoint is you really have to, this whole notion of I'm punishing guys one game. We saw the starting lineup change yesterday. Today it changed back. Did those guys really play that much better defense yesterday? Or today when James Blackman was struggling, I didn't feel like he got taken out of the game in the same way. So if it's a one-time thing that is meant to prove a point, but it doesn't actually prove the point, like I'm not sure what the point of continuing to do that is. I think that's happened over time where for a game, for a portion, we'll change a lineup, but then a couple minutes later the guy's in the game and it's as if nothing ever happened. And the same mistakes that you saw the day before that resulted in a guy getting yanked out of the game may not today. So I think that's something that has to be addressed. So Joe Johnson, we may have top 25 talent or even a top 50 team, performance greater than roster on paper. I'd be hard pressed to tell you that this IU team has played like a top 50 team to this point. I'm not going to say that they aren't one because they do have that talent. But if you're looking on a resume and what they've put on film and what they put on the court, I would have a hard time making a compelling argument that they are that's there. So Stephen Harris, how much of Maui performance is on coaching? How much is on the players? I'm going to answer only one of the questions. The other part is a Korean question. I do think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I touched on some of the coaching things already. I think that the notion of how we're penalizing players or we're benching guys and whatever has to be consistent, or it doesn't really mean a great deal. In terms of how much that's on the players, though, it is. What I will say is, so the defensive. So if you get past the point where you're saying the defense is X's and O's and we shouldn't be playing man or should be playing zone or whatever you want to say. I mean, at some point defense comes down to want to. And there have been a number of guys over the course of time who have not been great athletes, but have been good to at least adequate defenders. And for all the athleticism that guys like Troy Williams and James Blackman have and show on a game in and game out basis, I continue to struggle how they're unable to use that to their advantage on the defensive end. I think even Thomas Bryant, I tweeted this out at one point in the game. He plays on these ball screens like he's just trying to time it and block the shot. He's not really trying to cut off the driver. So I guess I have I'm apt to give Bryant a little bit more leeway, as a freshman. But again, these are the same things that plagued him in the Wake Forest game. I mean, players have to adjust to how they're being attacked and how they're approaching the situation. So I do think it's a little bit of both. I think the easy one for everybody, because of the general temperature the fan base has around Crean at this point, are going to go in his direction. But at some point, on some of these defensive things, that there's got to be more. Let's see. Let's see if we can get any more here. Most of these are about Crean, so just gonna kind of. All right. I have no idea. All right, so we got 324th in Division I in turnovers, not getting it done. I think that's a good one. Again, I touched on this a little bit earlier. We have, we've seen over the last couple of years, like this team kind of ebb and flow in different ways. So a couple of years ago, the team was good defensively and was just hard to watch on offense as you go through and have. With all the careless turnovers, and that's the kind of turnovers that are being made this year. You're going to make turnovers by trying to be aggressive, and IU wants to play aggressive, but got to find the line between smart and aggressive as well. And there are just times when there's so many times guys just leaving their feet to pass, just fundamental things that really shouldn't be happening at this level with this regularity. And again, some of that goes to, are we continuing to reinforce the message that that's not acceptable? If we start talking about, I'm going to take this guy out of the game or that guy out of the game, again, it feels like we're seeing some of the same mistakes over and over again, and it, is really, really a struggle to watch. But then that's been kind of mixed with. That's just been kind of mixed with the same things that we saw last year from a defensive standpoint. And so instead of the best of both worlds, it feels like the worst of both worlds. And again, it felt like We are watching these guys just look out there lost, searching for answers that they don't have right now. And it's definitely frustrating. I think their confidence has been incredibly shaken. And that really showed as things went down the stretch. See, difference is IU has no direction offensively or defensively unless we're hitting threes. I do think this team takes a great deal of its confidence from whether it's making shots. I think we touched on that a little bit after one of the games that it feels like this team continues to equate playing well with playing well offensively and making shots. And as we said after the Wake Forest game, until that changes, I'm not sure that you can expect to see things that won't have head-scratching results like this. And I think certainly we saw that tonight. They really struggled. They had a lot of shots rim out. There were times they were getting good shots. They just weren't falling. But again, it really seems that they those shots didn't go in. They didn't get a lot of confidence. They didn't get off to a hot start as they at least have in these other couple games. And it really took a while to wake up and get back. So Trenton, can Crean teach something a player isn't already good at? It seems the player has to do the heavy lifting solo. I think I touched a decent amount on some of that. I do think there are individual skill things, and really that's what the summer work is for. A lot of the time that these players get in the summer is more individual or small group work, and so that's really where the individual skills have to come in. The team concepts, whether they be offensive or defensive, those don't really come until practice starts. So I would like to think that those are a huge focus of that, whether that be defensive positioning, just, drills around agility and things like that. So I think there's a lot of people asking a similar question. Basically the same stuff we've seen since February, right? I don't know that I have a great one there. Sean mentioned something about free throws. I did touch on free throws at the beginning. That has been something that this team has, and it always strikes me as odd when a team who is typically good at shooting the basketball doesn't shoot well from the free throw line. And that was most definitely not the case tonight, and really has been an issue in a number of these other games, and really hasn't been a strength in many of these games. And we talked some of the early games, I just wasn't getting to the line enough, wasn't being aggressive enough. And tonight felt like the opposite, where they did make a concerted effort to get there, but just couldn't get to the line. And I thought, in contrast to, yesterday's game, Bryant struggled to get position. They really kind of worked from him first and went through him a lot. And tonight, other than those first few possessions, he scored, like I said, 4 points in the first couple minutes, and then really struggled after that. I think struggled to get position. There was a time, though, that he had great position, had a mismatch with a smaller player, and Robert Johnson, instead of dribbling to the wing to make an entry pass that would have been a much better angle, tried to throw one in from the top, and the ball ends up going out of bounds. So I think continued struggles on both ends. I think we've talked about that to some of these shows. Some of it is really fighting for and establishing position, and some of them are really the case of the players not being able to get the ball where it needs to be. So I think plenty of questions to go around as we go through things here. So I think I've hit most of the questions on Twitter. I do understand the coaching questions, the questions about Crean. And I think I've done my best to address those. I will say that, again, I don't think we have been at least all of us have been completely in defense of Crean, even over these last few years. Like I said, I think myself in particular, and I think there are questions to be asked there. The reality is, at this point, I'm not sure that that's something that's going to change. So we have to figure out, and watch what he can do with this team. But definitely concerning. The questions are warranted. I get it. But I don't know that I have too much more to say on that than I probably touched on already, or through some of the other games. So I think, it is going to be a long flight home for this team, and a lot of things for, the coaches and players to really try to sort through, because I don't know how this trip could have gone worse given the expectations going into it. Because quite honestly, there was no way in the world that this team was going to lose to St. John's, even though the 10-point deficit was probably a little bit less than I would have expected. That team is just not good. And so I don't think at any point that really felt like a realistic possibility. So in my head, the worst case scenario was a 1-2 finish. I just didn't see it a way that they could end up, 0-3. But this is about as bad as it gets, and things don't get easier. We talked a little bit about the strength of schedule component of losing to Wake Forest the other night. So yes, you've also got, we've also got. So you hurt your strength of schedule by not being able to play Vanderbilt, not being able to play a Kansas or UCLA. And not only that, you end up losing another game. And so now you really have 2 more chances in the non-conference against Duke and against North Carolina or against Notre Dame to get a good non-conference win. So those games become incredibly important. And I think the Duke game is one that everybody probably looked at the beginning of the season and didn't have a whole lot of confidence in to begin with. And I think, to think that this team is going to walk into that environment feeling great about itself certainly feels like a stretch at this point, although I guess who knows what happens in the next week or so. But definitely a lot of soul searching for this team to do, and it'll be interested to see how they respond. Not so much against Alcorn State on Monday, as I mentioned, just based on the quality of the opponent, but really in that Duke game on next Wednesday, I believe, and it will be interesting because things are. I've seen dumpster fire thrown out in our Twitter feed here. I'd be hard pressed to convince you that that's not the case. So. Somebody, Jason Cloud wrote, I think this is kind of a good point. You need to stop just talking the talk and start walking the walk. I would totally agree with that. I mean, for as much as guys can say, this was kind of my point with my mini rant about Crean after the Wake Forest game of saying like, oh well, some of that's on me, or we should change defenses or whatever. I mean, we got to stop hearing about it after the game and saying, oh, this is we need to fix this, we need to do that. We need to start seeing that improvement. The entire offseason heard a lot about. Here's how the defense is getting better. This is something we're working on, and we've seen little against good competition to indicate that that's the case, and just hasn't happened enough in stretches. Even the worst teams that IU played early in the season got the ball into the lane and got it where they wanted it. So, I think that's a great point, and everybody involved got to start. Walking the walk, as Jason said. I think that's probably a good way to put it. So I really have no idea how long this has been going. I feel like this has been a complete run-on sentence for me for quite some time, and I have a lot of admiration for people who do radio shows and things like that on their own, because it's a little bit hard not to have somebody to react to and things like that. But so I'll probably wrap things up here briefly. It looks like some of the post-game press conference quotes are coming out. I'm sure we'll do some coverage on that. No question we could get better at every aspect of the game. This is some of the tweets that Ryan's got from the press conference. A lot of room for improvement defensively. Just got to make free throws. Feel like these are all kind of common sense type comments, quite frankly. So anyway, so this is not the way anybody wanted to finish up this tournament. Certainly a disappointing start to the season for IU at 4-2 now as they move forward, and really, a lot of, like I said, a lot of soul searching to do, and we'll kind of go from there. So we've got another show on Monday. The Alcorn State game is in Bloomington at 7:00 on Monday night. So we'll have a show after that. It'll be interesting to get some perspective from Jared and Ryan as they get back and talk about this, kind of get their thoughts, maybe some thoughts other than my own, maybe even my own thoughts a little bit less in the heat of the moment right after the game. But just want to thank Michael Dugan, one of our interns, for doing the show yesterday. I thought he did a nice job, and really appreciate him stepping in with the game being in the middle of the afternoon. That did not work too well with my work schedule, and with Ryan covering the game and Jared prepping for the wedding. Really appreciate Michael stepping in to do that. Definitely a team effort here, so everybody's picking up the slack and making sure that we're giving somebody something after all these games, both in the form of the show and as well as in the form of our email newsletter. So I'll be doing stats for that sometime this evening, which is usually terrible because it just makes you revisit the game or key points of the game. So I'll probably do that with a beer in hand as I do that. So we'll get that email out to everybody. That's assemblycall.com/subscribe. If you haven't signed up for that yet, we'll have that out. We'll have the show on next Monday, and wish everybody hey, happy Thanksgiving, and hope everyone can enjoy some time with friends and family, and use that to erase any memory of these 3 games as we move forward with the season. So the season is still young. As bad as things seem now, as frustrated as I am now, and as frustrated as I might be when I think about this game 2 weeks from now, and this trip 2 weeks from now, it is early. There is time for change. I am not going to talk anybody out of being skeptical that change will be seen. We have seen and talked about this team's late season struggles. So feels like a group that has typically peaked early, and then with the exception of the Zeller and Oladipo Big Ten championship team, didn't play as well down the stretch. So if you don't want to believe me that things can turn around, I have little to do to talk you out of it. I think it's a fair complaint and a fair concern. I think that's something that we're just going to have to watch over the rest of the non-conference season. There's about a month left till Big Ten play starts, which I think is on the 30th of December. So a number of games left to work some of these things out, but these the couple games, that Duke game and the Notre Dame game, now loom particularly large when you talk about racking up good wins and things like that, based on how things have gone here. So we will be here every step of the way to commiserate with everyone, to talk with everyone, and to move things along there. Other thing I would say is, from a football standpoint, good luck to the football Hoosiers in the bucket game. Would definitely be help some IU fans get the taste of this tournament out of their mouth. If they can win the bucket for a 3rd straight season, go 6-6 and get ready for a bowl game, I think that would be great. They've been a similarly exciting at times and frustrating at times team to watch this season, but was impressed with how they came back against Maryland over last weekend, and hopefully they can get it done at Purdue. I know a lot of these guys who have been there for a while. Love to see Nate Sudfeld be able to go out in a bowl game, and some of the other guys who have been there the whole time and tried to see this team through what they've been through. So we'll be rooting for that on Saturday, and otherwise we will be back on Monday night with another edition of the Assembly Call. With that, I will leave you again. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and we will talk to you on Monday night.